If you own a Nintendo Switch and love JRPGs, you are genuinely living in one of the best eras to be a fan of the genre. Today we're counting down the top 20 best JRPGs on Switch, from solid picks all the way to the absolute must-plays. Let's get into it. Monster Hunter Stories 2: Wings of Ruin. This is a turn-based RPG where you play as a rider, the grandchild of a legendary monster tamer, and your whole thing is bonding with monsters instead of hunting them. You sneak into dens, steal eggs, hatch them, and raise creatures called monsties that fight alongside you in battle. The combat runs on a rock-paper-scissors system. Power beats technical, technical beats speed, speed beats power. And when both you and your monstie use the same attack type, you trigger a double attack that can stop the enemy cold. There's a kinship gauge that builds up as you fight, and when it's full, you can mount your monstie and unleash a massive kinship attack. On the story side, something is causing Rathalos all over the world to disappear, and the game drops you into the middle of that mystery right at the start. Ivalice originally came out in 1994, and the fact that it only just got an official Western release in 2022 is honestly kind of wild. This HD 2D remake puts you across 7 completely different stories, each set in a different time period. Prehistoric times, ancient China, feudal Japan, the Wild West, the modern era, a sci-fi spaceship, and the near future. You can play them in any order you want, and each one plays differently. The ninja chapter leans into stealth. The martial arts chapter is about finding a successor. The sci-fi chapter is basically a horror movie with no battles until the end. Combat takes place on a 7x7 grid and is turn-based, but positioning matters a lot because every move has a different area of effect. Once you finish all 7 stories, the game pulls everything together in a way that hits way harder than you'd expect from something this short.
You're done!
Final Fantasy X/10-2 HD Remaster gives you 2 complete JRPGs in one package, and FF10 alone is worth playing. The story follows Tidus, a star athlete from a futuristic city who is transported to the world of Spira, where he joins Guardians protecting the summoner Yuna on her journey to defeat the monstrous Sin. Their relationship becomes the emotional heart of the adventure. Combat is fully turn-based, letting you see the turn order, swap party members freely, and plan every move. Character growth uses the flexible sphere grid system. FF10-2 continues the story with faster ATB battles, a fun dress sphere job system, and a lighter tone, offering a fresh take while keeping the adventure going. Both games run great on Nintendo Switch, making them perfect for handheld play. Dragon Quest VII was famously one of the longest JRPGs ever made. We're talking 100+ hours on the original PlayStation. This reimagined version on Switch slims it down to a still meaty 50 to 55 hours while adding proper voice acting, a stunning diorama-style art direction that looks like tiny storybook figurines come to life, and a significantly overhauled class system. You live on what seems to be the only island in an endless ocean, and the game is about traveling back in time to restore other lands that have been sealed away by an ancient evil one island at a time. Each island has its own self-contained story, its own people and problems, and you have to save them before their world disappears forever. The job system lets you class up your characters, and the new moonlighting mechanic lets you equip 2 vocations at once for the first time in the series, opening up a ton of build possibilities. NieR Automata. Set in a post-apocalyptic Earth, you play as 2B, an android soldier sent to reclaim the planet from machine life forms that drove humanity to the moon. That's the setup, but the game keeps peeling back layers and challenging everything you thought you knew about it. The combat is developed by Platinum Games, so it's fast, fluid, and built around combos with light and heavy attacks that you can mix and chain together. You equip different weapons to each attack button, carry a floating pod that fires bullets and has its own special programs, and install plug-in chips to customize your stats and abilities. The game also shifts camera perspectives mid-play. Sometimes it's a third-person action game, sometimes it's a side-scroller, sometimes it's a top-down shooter. It keeps you constantly off balance in the best way.
You know, ma'am, I'm glad you're here.
Why?
Triangle strategy. You play as Serenoa, heir to a noble house caught in the middle of a three-nation conflict over salt and iron, two resources that basically run the world. The game is a tactical RPG on a grid units take turns moving and attacking on multi-level battlefields where height advantage matters, flanking matters, and positioning can mean the difference between a clean win and a wipe. But what sets Triangle strategy apart is the Scales of Conviction system. At major turning points in the story, you can't just make a choice yourself, you have to convince your allies to vote with you. And to sway their votes, you need to have built enough trust and aligned with their values throughout the game. This means your relationships and past decisions carry real weight. The game has multiple routes and endings, and going back to see how different choices play out is genuinely rewarding. Xenoblade Chronicles is set on the body of two massive dead titans, and yes, they are literally that. Titanic beings whose frozen bodies now make up the entire world. One side is organic and lush, the other mechanical and cold. You play as Shulk, a young engineer who wields a sword called the Monado that grants him visions of the future. He can see attacks before they happen, which ties directly into the combat. Battles are real-time with an MMO-like feel. You auto-attack while positioning yourself and manually activating Art's special moves with cooldowns, different ranges, and positioning bonuses. The story kicks off with a brutal attack on Shulk's home colony and follows his quest for revenge, though it evolves into something far bigger and stranger as you go. The definitive edition adds a post-game epilogue called Future Connected, polishes the visuals significantly, and re-records much of the soundtrack. Sea of Stars. Developed by Sabotage Studio, the team behind The Messenger. It's a love letter to 90s JRPGs like Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana, but it's not just nostalgia bait. You play as Zale and Valir, two solstice warriors who harness the power of the sun and moon to fight against a corrupting ancient evil. The combat is turn-based but very active. There's a timed hit mechanic where pressing buttons at the right moment boosts your attack damage or reduces incoming hits. And a lock system that lets you cancel enemy attacks by hitting them with specific damage types before the attack fires off. You explore the world by swimming, climbing, and swinging on a grappling hook, which makes traversal feel surprisingly dynamic for a 2D RPG. The pixel art is stunning. The soundtrack has contributions from Yasunori Mitsuda of Chrono Trigger fame. Pokémon Legends. Arceus. Set in the ancient Hisui region, the land that would eventually become Sinnoh, you play as a researcher tasked with building the very first Pokédex. The approach to catching Pokémon is completely different. You can sneak through tall grass, throw Pokéballs directly at wild Pokémon in the overworld, or toss out one of your own team members to trigger a battle. For the first time in the series, wild Pokémon can physically hit you, and taking too much damage sends you back to camp. Battles keep the classic turn-based foundation, but add agile style and strong style moves. You can sacrifice power for more turns or sacrifice turns for bigger hits, which adds real decision-making to every encounter. The story involves a mysterious rift tearing open over Mount Coronet, and explores what it was like when humans and Pokémon were just beginning to trust each other. Unicorn Overlord is a tactical RPG from Vanillaware, the studio behind Dragon's Crown, and 13 Sentinels, and it's genuinely one of the best strategy games in years. You play as Alain, a prince who escapes when his kingdom falls to a corrupt general, and you spend the game rebuilding a liberation army and taking back the continent one region at a time. The overworld plays out like a real-time strategy game. You move squads of units across the map, liberate forts and towns, and respond to enemy movements on the fly. Actual combat is automated. You pre-assign tactics and formations for each unit, then watch them execute when squads clash. The depth comes from the setup, choosing the right class combinations, assigning tactics for specific situations, managing a roster of over 60 characters. A battle timer keeps you from turtling, which forces aggressive play.
I have you!
It's up to you. I shall protect you.
Paper Mario. The Thousand-Year Door is a game that fans have been begging Nintendo to bring back for 20 years, and this 2024 Switch remake is exactly what it needed to be. Mario heads to Rogueport, a rough port town sitting on top of ancient ruins, after Peach sends him a magical treasure map pointing to something called the Thousand-Year Door. From there, the game unfolds across 8 chapters, each taking Mario to a completely different location, with its own tone, characters, and problems. The writing is genuinely funny, sharp, self-aware humor that holds up 20 years later, and the cast of partner characters you collect along the way are some of the most charming in Nintendo history. Combat is turn-based with action commands. You can press buttons at the right moment to boost attack damage or reduce damage taken, which keeps battles engaging rather than menu mashing. Dark Souls Remastered. The Switch version of Dark Souls. Remastered brings one of the most influential action RPGs ever made to a handheld, and it plays better than you'd expect. You're an undead warrior in the crumbling kingdom of Lordran, piecing together a fragmented lore through environmental storytelling, item descriptions, and NPC dialogue, rather than cutscenes. The game gives you almost nothing, no quest markers, no hand-holding, no clear direction, and forces you to read the world to understand it. Combat is methodical and deliberate. Stamina management, shield positioning, dodge timing, and knowing when to back off are what separate wins from deaths. You level up at bonfires, choose which stats to invest in, and build a character suited to your playstyle, whether that's a tank in heavy armor, a fast dex build, or a spellcaster. Final Fantasy XII is the black sheep of the Final Fantasy family that time has been very kind to. Set in Ivalice, the same world as Final Fantasy Tactics. The story follows Vaughn, a street kid from an occupied city who gets pulled into a political conflict between Imperial powers and resistance fighters. The real stars of the cast are Balthier and Fran, sky pirates who bring swagger and wit to a story about war, colonialism, and what it costs to fight back. What makes FF12 stand out mechanically is the gambit system. You program your party members' behavior by setting conditional rules like, if ally HP below 50%, use potion, or if enemy is weak to fire, cast Firaga. Combined with the Zodiac job system that lets you assign 2 jobs per character from a pool of 12, you end up building a genuinely customizable team that plays itself intelligently while you call the big shots. Final Fantasy Tactics is one of the greatest tactical RPGs ever made, and the fact that it's now on Switch is a big deal. Set in the Kingdom of Ivalice, the same world as FF12, the story follows Ramza Bulv, the son of a renowned noble family, and his childhood friend Delita, a commoner, as they're pulled into a brutal civil war called the War of the Lions. What makes the story remarkable is how grounded and politically layered it is. The church is corrupt, the nobility is ruthless, and your heroic actions will never be recorded in the official history books. It's mature and tragic in ways that still hit hard. Gameplay is grid-based tactical combat, where unit positioning, height, terrain type, and elemental effects all matter. Characters equip jobs from a massive tree: Knight, Black Mage, Dragoon, Samurai, Geomancer, and over 20 more, and abilities learned in one job carry over to others, letting you build incredibly creative hybrid classes. Persona 4 Golden is one of the best places to start. You play as a high school student who moves to the small, quiet town of Inaba, and shortly after you arrive, people start turning up dead in strange circumstances, their bodies discovered after rainy nights. You and your friends discover a mysterious TV world where a killer has been throwing victims, and it's up to you to dive in and rescue them before it's too late. The gameplay splits between two worlds. Inaba in the daytime, where you go to school, build relationships with a cast of well-written characters called social links, and manage your time carefully in the dungeon inside the TV, where you explore procedurally structured floors, battle shadows in turn-based combat, and exploit elemental weaknesses to trigger all-out attacks.
I smell 3 enemies! Don't get careless!
Dragon Quest I and II HD 2D Remake. This HD 2D double pack brings the two games that launched one of the most beloved JRPG franchises in history, rebuilt completely from the ground up with the gorgeous layered visual style used in Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy. Dragon Quest I is a tight, focused origin story. You are the descendant of a legendary hero, tasked with defeating the Dragon Lord who has stolen the Sphere of Light and thrown the kingdom into darkness. It's short by modern standards, maybe 10 to 15 hours, and plays like a beautifully preserved snapshot of where JRPGs began. Simple turn-based combat, a small overworld, and a satisfaction that comes from that pure, uncluttered loop. Dragon Quest II picks up the scope considerably: 3 party members, a bigger world, more complex dungeons, and a story about 3 descendants of the original hero hunting down a dark wizard. Fire Emblem. Three Houses is not just a great strategy game, it's a great game, period. You play as Byleth, a mercenary who becomes a professor at a military academy with 3 student houses: the noble Black Eagles, the disciplined Blue Lions, and the ambitious Golden Deer. You pick one house at the start, and the students in that house become your class, your army, and your family. During academy life, you train students, share meals, explore the monastery, fish, have tea, and build relationships that carry weight in battle. Then conflict escalates, and you're commanding your students in full tactical warfare on a grid positioning, terrain, attack ranges, and class abilities all matter. The weapon triangle returns in a more nuanced form, and each character has a unique class progression tree you guide over time.
Is that all?
Persona 5 Royal is the defining JRPG of the past decade. You play as a high school student who's been falsely convicted and put on probation, forced to transfer to a new school in Tokyo. There, you discover the metaverse, a reality where the distorted desires of corrupt adults take physical form as palaces, and you become the leader of the Phantom Thieves, a group of students who break into these palaces and steal the hearts of the wicked. The game runs on a daily calendar. You go to school, work part-time jobs, hang out with friends, and develop bonds called confidants with a cast of incredibly well-written characters. Those bonds unlock new abilities in battle and deepen the story. Dungeon exploration in the palaces is a blend of stealth and action. You ambush enemies, negotiate with shadows, collect new personas, and solve puzzles designed around each palace's theme.
Persona! Go down!
Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the one monolith soft game that people point to when they want to explain why this series deserves more love. Set in a world called Ionios, where 2 nations, Keves and Agnes, are locked in perpetual war, soldiers don't age naturally and have a fixed lifespan called a term. You follow Noah and Mio, soldiers from opposite sides who end up fighting together after a chance encounter. And the story explores war, mortality, and what it means to live a life that feels like it has a predetermined end. Combat is real-time. With a deep class system at the center, you can switch any character to any class, mix and match abilities learned across classes, and fuse party members together in a mechanic called Ouroboros that transforms 2 characters into a giant superform. Dragon Quest XI S. You play as the Luminary, a young man born with a legendary destiny in the town of Cobblestone, who sets out into the world after discovering the truth about who he is, only to find that the kingdom believes his very existence is a threat. What follows is an adventure that spans continents, covers an enormous cast of companions, and eventually goes to places the opening hours give you absolutely no indication of. Each character who joins your party has a fully fleshed out backstory, personal goals, and an arc that gets real attention from the writing. Turn-based combat is classic Dragon Quest clean, satisfying, and packing more depth than it looks at first glance, with a pep system that charges up over time and lets party members pull off powerful team attacks. The S version on Switch adds an orchestrated soundtrack option, the ability to toggle 2D mode to play the entire game in a 16-bit aesthetic, and additional story content for every party member. Whether you're new to the genre or a lifelong fan, there's something on this list for you. Drop a comment with your personal top pick. Thanks for watching, and go play some JRPGs.